Welcome to Deep Look, Multiworld's weekly podcast about the latest in the ultimate world. I am the editor, Charlie Eisenhood. Joining me is Ultiworld senior editor Keith Rayner on this Tuesday, November 19th. Keith, Thanksgiving is almost here. The holiday season's ready to roll. Every year, I feel like you have a hotter take about Thanksgiving, so I'm just gonna see what you got for us right now. You got any
Oh
thoughts?
gosh, just off the rip, huh?
Yeah, right off the rip.
So I was on the Drafted podcast, hosted by friends of the show, Daniel Prentice and Preston Thompson. So a little plug. And we actually drafted like our ideal, based on their pre-selected categories. So you had a certain menu of options, and you were trying to draft your best Thanksgiving day. And so I don't necessarily have a hot take, except that key lime pie is great and better than pumpkin pie, and I would happily switch them, even if pumpkin pie is a traditional.
Okay, so hang on.
Meal.
You're telling me that if you went to Thanksgiving next week, you would rather have key lime pie than pumpkin pie at Thanksgiving?
100%. But
wow,
to be clear, I'm coming at this
that's a
as
wild
a pumpkin
take.
pie hater. I do not like pumpkin pie. So
okay, do you not like the pumpkin part of it, or do you not like the spice profile? Because I think pumpkin pie is one of the great pies.
Yeah, I'd say it's much more the pumpkin component. Like it just, I don't think that the texture of pumpkin pie is really what I want.
You're just way off on this. Ice cold pumpkin pie next day out of the fridge for breakfast in the morning is one of the best things of the year, I would say. That is an elite breakfast.
The thing is that I'm open to being wrong about this. I am willing to be like, I am in the like minority bubble of people who are wrong about this, but this is just the way I'm built. I'm just built like this. Like, what am I going to do?
Well, speaking of the Drafted podcast, I was on a few years ago to do the Thanksgiving draft, just straight up like drafting foods to have at Thanksgiving. I was third in the draft of 3. Taken ahead of me were turkey and ham in round 1. And I made a critical mistake. I took gravy, which was for sure the right pick. But then I took, I can't remember exactly now, but I took mashed potatoes and gravy instead of taking stuffing and gravy, which would have been the right decision. And then I was just hamstrung the rest of the time. And it's really tough though. Like I took duck in the last round for my protein and caught a lot of grief for it, but I still think it was the right choice.
That's like, I feel like one of the most made fun of picks in the show's history.
What was I supposed to do?
5 seasons of the show.
Tell me, what was I supposed to do? Not have meat? What would you have done? Turkey and ham were already selected. I had no way of picking them. It's not like
I think you kind of get unfairly speared here.
Should I have picked goose?
I do think pork could have been okay, but I think duck,
pork. No. Duck has the required grandeur for a holiday meal. Chicken and pork are not. That's Tuesday night stuff.
Yeah, but you know what? Pork's really good. It tastes really good.
So is duck. Duck is really good. Like I know you know this. You've had duck.
That's fair.
It is objectively better than ham and turkey.
Yeah, that's probably for a flavor standpoint. That's probably true.
Okay. All right. As long as you agree. I don't know why I get clowned for this. This is totally unfair. All right. Let's get into the show. Make sure you hit like, give us a subscribe. It costs you nothing to subscribe to the YouTube channel. What are we at now? We've got over 120,000 YouTube subscribers now. And we're trying to keep it going.
It's not enough.
Not 123,000. I would love to be at 300,000 by the end of 2025. And you can be one of them if you have not already subscribed. So first thing, World Masters Ultimate Championships just concluded this past weekend out in Irvine, California. Keith, I got to tell you, this was quite the complex. This was really quite the complex. Beautiful stadium. It's where the like semi-pro soccer team plays. Field's right there. nice grass. Obviously, you're in Irvine, so it's great weather. I would love to see Club Nationals end up here in the future. It's a little tough because the soccer team plays until around the end of October. As we check out some of the highlights, it was a pretty fun weekend overall. And we'll talk about the competition, but I just really enjoyed the complex. It's a field lined for Ultimate. Like, how about that? Instead of having to be on the high school stadium field, what a catch here! One of the iconic plays this weekend. And shout out to Nathan Kalakovic, who let us hook into his camera for the finals, and so we were able to get some pretty awesome slow-mo shots into the broadcast. So something we're doing for the first time. So, Keith, lots to talk about. Lots of wins for Canada. USA not doing as hot as they do at most international competitions.
Well, I mean the bar's pretty high, but
that is true.
We have talked our fair amount of trash about Canada's international performances on this show in the past year or two, but that's in part because the Canada of old was a superpower in Ultimate, and they came in and showed that, right? They said, "Hey, the Canada of old's right here. We still got it like that."
Yeah, I mean, it turns out that like the top players in Canada from like 10 years ago are really good.
Yeah.
And so, excuse me, I'm coming off. I'm still a little sick, to be honest, coming off of illness. So I just want to run through the results really quick. Masters Open, Canada wins 15-13 over the United States. They played two great games against each other, once in pool play and once in the final. Kind of goat versus ring, circa 2016.
Yeah.
Canada also wins in the Masters women's division, 13-11. They defeat the U.S. In the mixed division, easy win for the United States, mostly Seattle-based team, kind of like a mixtape crew, 15-7 over Japan. In the Grandmasters Open, Canada wins 15-8. In the Grandmasters women's, the USA team, there were multiple USA teams, the Elderflowers, which was mostly like California players, including Carolyn Finney and Kayla Helton and Cree Howard, who obviously were totally dominant. They win 15-10 over Canada's Vans. In the Grandmaster Mixed, it was a USA matchup in the final. Surly wins it 15-13 over Dial-Up. And in the Great Grandmaster Open, Surly wins there as well, 15-13 over Immortals. That was a fun one.
I'm not misreading this.
Game.
As far as I can tell, in Great Grandmasters, or in Grand and Great Grandmasters combined, excluding Grandmasters Open, Japan was the only team to set it, the only country to set a team besides the US and Canada. Great Grandmasters Women's, Great Grandmasters Mixed, or Great Grandmaster Open, Great Grandmaster Mixed, and Grandmaster Women's were exclusively otherwise Canada and the US, with like 4 teams apiece in each of those.
I think if you were to hold this tournament in Europe, you might see,
Fair.
6 European teams and 2 US and 1 Canadian or something like that. Like I think it's very much regionally based. Like if you're 48 years old with 3 kids, are you really going to take a week to fly to another country and play in an Ultimate tournament? Maybe not.
Great Grandmasters is not, as you could just see from me trying to say the various Legends. Legends is next.
Straight.
I don't know what comes after that. Just like Immortals. Like
I was saying this before the game, that like for some of the players on the field for that Great Grandmaster Open final, it might be the last time they ever play an organized game of Ultimate. Like that's not out of the question. But there were some straight ballers out there. Don Tom, who I know is like maybe like a borderline Hall of Fame guy. He was awesome. And fun fact, he is the father of Wilhelmina Graf and Oscar Graf, which I had no idea. So there you go. Like once again, having great lineage in Ultimate means that you are awesome at Ultimate. But he was great. Ron Kubalanza, Trey Katzenbach, like legends.
What we
And
need at
and
this
some
tournament
horrible
is a
bids. It's true. Some horrible bids.
what we needed at this tournament is we need like a parents and kids game. Like you're on the team with your progeny.
It's funny you say that because the thing that I noticed at Masters, this is my first time going to a Masters event. There were so many children. Like there were just little kids everywhere. It's like very noticeably different than going to other ultimate tournaments. Um, and it makes sense, you know. But good vibes all around. Of course, the big question, Keith, is does the U.S. need to start actually picking teams in a different way besides sending the Masters Nationals champion or the team that accepts the bid, basically?
Uh, if they want to win, maybe. I mean, it's not like the US was bad. Like they still were essentially the first or second best team in every division. So I don't know that you need to make major sweeping. Oh my gosh, this is disaster territory changes. But I thought that there was an astute observation in the that I agree with in our Discord, which is that these divisions are for the players. So uh, let's not put the focus on winning the tournaments from a USA Ultimate standpoint. Let's put together the best experience. So if the players would like to be on a all-star team and have to go through some sort of application or tryout process, cool. If they want to do it as a club team, then cool. I'm down with that too. Uh, so I feel like this. My guess is that maybe there's something to the kind of reunion effect of coming back with your club team. So players probably would prefer to do that if I had to guess. But I'm just a Masters age player, not someone who's ever played actually in Masters. So can't really speak to it personally. But I just don't think that winning is that important to me in this front. And the teams are still good. Like they're still putting up great results. So someone else said, "Hey, it's fun for the U.S. to go in with a little bit of a handicap, with the results a little bit uncertain anyway."
I mean, I agree, but I think USA Ultimate just absolutely despises not winning every single international division. And I bet you money they will have an application process next time. I'm not saying that's the right thing to do. I'm just saying that's what I think will happen.
Can you just hybrid it? Like you get the club team, and the club team gets to take up
I mean, that's
16 spots, and then you have eight
effectively how it works now.
wild card spots.
No, I mean, because like you're not going to tell a club team, oh, you have to cut your bottom 8 and pick up these other people. Like the thing is, every other country pretty much is picking their teams in some way. So the U.S. just, I mean, we used to do this for, worlds too until like 8 years ago. It hasn't been that long. So I think that, I saw some salty looking USAU folks standing around the fields as their teams lost. I won't be surprised at all if, and it may also be the case that, Masters age players are like, hey, like, it's not fair. Like, I want to represent my country. And I, I have no real skin in this game, to be honest. I don't really care what they do. But I do think they're going to pick teams, and then it becomes yet another tournament where the U.S. just slaughters everybody. I don't love it.
And is that for a little while? For anyway, things will catch up
until
starting to
the kids in France are 20 years older, and then then they'll start winning. It's time for our trivia question of the week.
Well, this week's trivia question of the week is going to be about the under 24 World Championships, which Charlie and I will be starting to make our roster picks for Team USA later in this episode. But whoever makes the team, I think Charlie and I could pick the last 72 players we think we're going to make it in. I think the U.S. is going to go in as the favorite in every division, and that's well earned. They've been the winningest team. But after the U.S., who else has been successful? Who I want to see, Charlie. At first, I was going to say let's do the next team in line. Who has the next best win percentage over the last 3 U24 tournaments: 2023, 2019, and 2018? Excuse me. But I actually think I want to see if you can get the next 3 countries in order by win percentage, and you have to have been at least present at all three of these tournaments. There's like a couple countries who I think maybe went like once or twice. Uh, their win percentages may be inflated by that. So, we're looking at teams that played like countries that played a minimum of 50 games or whatever.
Sure, sure. No one-offs.
Yeah. 3 tournaments. So the
Um,
last 3 U24s, you think you can get the right order of the 2, 3,
the
and 4
next
in win
the next
percentage.
best winners.
And this does
Um,
Max asked if this includes consolation play. It does include consolation play.
okay.
It's just all wins and losses.
Okay. Across all divisions.
Across all
I
3
will
divisions.
go Canada. That's my pick for number
Do you want
2. No, let
do
me
you want
just
me to
make my
do you want me
pick
to wait
and
till you
then
do all 3? Yeah,
yeah, let
do all
me do
3.
all 3. Let me do all 3. So I'll say Canada. I will say trying to remember how these teams have been doing and what's been happening in these games. Um, hmm. I will go with it's like very hard for me to remember what happened in U24s. I will go with GB, and then my final pick is Japan.
All right, all right. So Canada, GB, Japan. Dexter in the chat says Canada, Japan, GB.
Oh,
David
okay.
says Colombia. So we'll see how it lines up. So this was a bit of a surprise to me, but number 2 was actually Japan by a very narrow margin.
Over
Their
Canada.
record and Canada's record are almost identical.
Okay. As soon
Japan
as I had
66 and 21, Canada 68 and 22. So
oh, okay.
uh, it's like 0.3% difference between the two. Um, so Japan has the second spot, then Canada, and then it's Italy. Italy with
Okay, I was thinking about
58%
Italy.
win percentage. Justin guessed Belgium. Belgium is good, but I don't think they hit the 50 game threshold. But they have had good results lately. France obviously has been good lately, but as David pointed out, Italy has been the most successful, I guess, of the European teams.
Over time.
Australia also above 50%, but
GB was a
across
bad
all
guess.
divisions, sometimes you miss one division. Yeah, GB had 48%. So they're like in the mix with Germany.
Okay.
They're around there, but Italy takes the top spot from the European countries.
Gotcha. Well, let me ask you a trivia question, but it's a future
Ooh,
looking
hit
one.
me.
So it's not really a trivia question. It's more of a prediction. Uh what's your top 3 countries in terms of aggregate performance for the upcoming U24s in 2025?
Um, well, I assume I'm going to reserve the right to change this by the time we come around to our actual preview
Of
show
course,
when
of
we're
course.
looking at rosters and whatnot.
This is the
Um,
too early prediction.
yeah, way too early. Well, I'm going to take USA at the top.
Yeah.
Uh, and then, ooh, to me, it's got to be some combination of Japan, Canada, and France. I think I'm going to go
You're gonna
France.
anti
No,
Italy, huh? A lot of good young
you know
Italian
what?
players.
I think I'm gonna fade France because I don't know if they can field a good team in all 3 divisions. So I think I'm gonna go Canada and Japan. I'll just stick with the stalwarts.
Wow, I feel like Canada's down kind of bad right now.
I don't know. I still think they could put together part of why they maybe aren't as performing as well in a specific division is because they field good teams in all
They
3
have a good
divisions.
yeah, yeah. That's a fair point. I think I would go US, France, Canada.
It's fair. I mean, I think those are the 4 teams that you're picking from.
Yeah. It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun. We're gonna talk some U24 in just a second, but first, how about this news? the LA Astra, who are formerly a part of the Western Ultimate League before not exactly disbanding, but dropping out of the league and kind of finding new ownership in 2024. They applied to rejoin the Western Ultimate League. Unlike Oregon, who did the same thing, the Astra were denied re-entry into the Western Ultimate League and have subsequently announced that they will be joining the Premier Ultimate League. And this will be the only West Coast team in the PUL, at least for now. And so the PUL is adding a team in LA, with, of course, the large majority of their teams concentrated in the Midwest and East Coast, along with team in Texas, in Austin. So LA now joins into the South Division, where they will play teams like Austin and Raleigh and Atlanta. I actually haven't looked to see what the full thing is, but like, Keith, I got to be honest, this is a weird one. Like, first of all, like, of course, the Western Ultimate League denying the team re-entry, like, there must be something going on that they don't feel confident that the Astra is like ready to be a stable franchise again. And then the PUL making what has to be one of the craziest decisions of the year, adding a West Coast team, which is just going to astronomically increase travel costs for all the teams that have to play them, including the Astra, who now have to fly across the country to play their away games. Does this make sense?
It does not, especially not from the outside. I mean, it's very confusing. Are they going to go in as like it is the PUL X Astra like that? Like, are they not even going to be in the PUL? They're like they're a feature artist this year on the track. Like, I don't know. It's very.
We're
like,
collabing with the Astra this season.
Yeah, but I think my interpretation, with a little bit of background, like I've talked to a couple people about it. I think the Astra couldn't get organized on the WUL's timeline is what I think happened. I think that the Astra couldn't pull all the pieces that the WL wanted to see in time for the deadline to make their decision. And I guess that was not a problem for the PUL. And I have to think, like, the PUL is not ignorant to the costs that they're incurring. So either they see some sort of big financial windfall that's going to help assuage those costs, or the Astra are bringing some cash to the table. The PUL was like, look, we cannot afford this. Y'all are going to have to fly for 2/3 of your games, or you're going to have to host multiple teams in like a tournament weekend style thing, like what they've been doing in the WL, something, because it doesn't make sense for teams to travel to them. Like, Texas already was a big burden on a bunch of the league's teams to travel, both for Texas to travel to teams and for teams to travel to Texas. Now you're adding LA, like it's going to be worse.
This doesn't make any sense at all. I'm sorry. Like, and it's not like this gives the PUL some kind of like obvious foothold in the West. If they're adding 3 or 4 teams from the West and those teams could kind of just play each other, then that, maybe makes sense. But instead, they're just adding like this far-flung team. And I mean, Revolution already tried this and it didn't really work because it's not sustainable. And this will also not be sustainable. So the likely outcomes here for me are, of course, other teams who are forced to now fly to California for a game are going to be pissed, like want money from the Astra or the league, I would assume. And so either the Astra just rejoins the Western Ultimate League next year, or I guess it's possible that this is the first domino to start to fall towards the obvious long run equilibrium of having a single women's league that is, bi-coastal, and you have 2 divisions of play, or maybe possibly 4. And then you play, a quote unquote Super Bowl, which is, makes a lot of sense, right? Like, there's the reason that this is developed like this in every pro sport. Having 2 leagues now with one, like, I don't know, the Western Ultimate League is probably pissed too. But it's just
They have
the
to feel
whole
a little
thing. The whole
spurned,
thing
right?
makes no sense. Like Western Ultimate League had this team in their league. They vetted this ownership group and everything again, and they were like, "No, you can't come back." The PUL is like, "Great, we'll take you." Why? I'm I'm sorry, it doesn't make any sense.
Well, you also have two different structures for leagues and two different leadership groups, and like maybe the Astra leadership group fit and the structure that they were looking for fit better with the PUL. Maybe it was partially on the Astra. Maybe they were like pulled out on the WL. I don't know. Who knows?
Who
I think
knows?
that I think also it is great that like there's obviously talent in LA. I'm glad that the team and the organization has found a way to continue on. And then we're going to get to see the players, and it'll be an interesting wrinkle to PUL competition potentially. We've seen some pretty good stuff from LA at points. Uh, maybe they could just be the fulcrum point for the two leagues in a pseudo merger, where it's just which team does better against the Astra. Like the Astra are independent, and it's whoever does better, whichever league is performs better versus the Astra. They could be the one connective piece to tell you which league's better.
Well, David P in the chat points out that Atlanta to LA flights are cheaper than Atlanta to Portland Maine flights, which is a fair point. It's not like it's like so brutally expensive, especially if you're flying from Atlanta, because that's a major hub, to LA, another major hub. Um, but it's not just the cost of the ticket, it's also the time cost of traveling that far. Um, and it's also that, like, when you go to Portland, for instance, you're probably playing 2 games up in that neck of the woods. You're typically going to play New York and Portland or something like that. And so you're driving between them. You're getting 2 birds for 1 stone. Um, it's also important to note that, like, the Portland team is not in the same division as Atlanta, so they're typically not playing each other anymore because they've split into the South and the North, or whatever they call it. So, I don't know. This one just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Um, we'll see what happens though. It's time to get to U24 stuff. Keith, tryouts are in the books. We should have team selections announced sometime in the next few weeks. Last time around, they were out before Christmas, sometime in mid-December. And the big question is, who's a lock? Who's a lock? Who's definitely making this team? Because we have tryouts, whatever, but there's usually some players going into these that you're like, you know what, this player is definitely going to make it. So who's on your locks list, Keith?
Yeah, this was really hard this year. I think maybe the best way for us to approach this is for us to make some locks, and maybe I don't know if we want to give ourselves a number, like you only get 10 locks or 12 locks, or if you just want to go to you. I mean, it was really hard for me to draw a line between the tops of my next group, like my next tier of players, and the end of my locks. And like when I started out, I had way more than the 36 players for the 36 women matchup players and male matchup players that are going to be on the team. Like I just had too many people that were locks and
You
likelies. So I was like, well, this can't be right.
trying to cut it
This I
down?
must have misunderstood the definition of lock. Um, so yeah, I pared it down. I think I got down to 14 locks or 13 locks for each male matching players and women matching players. But I still don't know if I even feel good about it. Like I've been, this is maybe the least confident I felt going into this exercise.
I I feel like it's interesting because some of these players began their college careers during COVID. And so there was a lot of weirdness there, both with, like, not only did we miss essentially a whole season, but you had players not necessarily getting the same kinds of roles that they typically would at that age, because there were 6th and 7th year players getting those starting spots. So this is kind of like the first time we're really churning out of COVID times. Um, and so I think it's just like a little bit more uncertainty about players, because there's a lot of players we haven't seen at the highest levels. There's way more players than usual that I don't know their name, that are not familiar to me from elite college play. So how are those players going to do? Like, are there some diamonds in the rough that we just don't know about? So I agree with you, Keith. I think it's like a little bit less obvious this time around, but I still think there's a lot of locks.
I think so. Here's part of my theory right now as to why it's so weird this year. It's in part because of the 6th years. So college is has more stars who are not eligible to play in this than usual. And so
Right.
that's blocking some other players, like pushing them down the pecking order in the college scene where we would see them. And it's also leading to USAU reaching further into the talent pool to bring in players for tryouts. I think we're seeing a lot of D3 players, a lot of players from smaller schools, and a lot of really young players, a lot of high school aged or just starting college career players on this list. And I don't feel like that's typical. And I think recently we've seen USAU more apt to take some of those players. So it feels like anything's on the table here. I know there will be surprises. There's 72 players getting picked. Like there's gonna be surprises in that group. There are players that weren't even invited to tryouts that ended up getting late invites to tryouts. There may be more than I even have listed. I only found out a couple of those. And some of those players might make it. Like it is hard to really make a pick, but we can go into the exercise of starting with our locks. So I think
Right.
the easy place to start is do you want to start in women matching players or male matching players?
Well, let's start with women matching players.
Okay, let's go with these are basically like elite club quality players already. Like these players are showing out at club nationals.
Mega
I don't
lock.
think we need to worry about them. Yeah. So that's Trout Waybright,
Yep.
Khalil Phillips,
Yep.
Torrey Gray.
Sure.
Uh, I think maybe from that group, Jolie Krebs. I don't think she's able to do tryouts. I don't think
That
she was
doesn't
able to go to
matter.
tryouts.
They
But
gave
I
her
think
a
she's
spot
probably
before
a lock.
they even announced the coaches.
Erica Birdsong,
Yep.
Rachel Chang, and Chloe Akimi. Chloe Akimi is another one. Just
Gotta
coming off a
put
great club
Chloe
season.
Akimi had a monster season. I'm, like,
Yeah.
weirdly not 100% sure Rachel Chang is a lock. Is that crazy?
I
I
mean,
I
I
thought
think
Rachel
I think
Chang was good
their
at
college season was
U20s,
a
but
little underwhelming, but
a
they were
little
so good
underwhelming at
at
U20s, a little
club.
underwhelming in the college season. I don't know, like, you're probably right, but I hesitate to put her on my list.
I think that the way that they played a club and
Yeah,
their experience, and also being able to be like a true rock center handler, which I
that's
don't know
true.
that the pool has a ton of. Other than that, is going to give them a leg up. So
They're very good, don't get me wrong. I didn't feel like 100% lock. Otherwise, all the names you named, I was like, absolutely on my list.
uh, after that, I feel like my locks are players who like have already good club or really high level college experience or bring a particular skill set to the table. So for me, I think that's Elise Friedman, who I also heard had a great tryout. Uh, Cyrus Linkfield, Caroline Stone, uh, and Naomi Fina. And then another player I heard had a great tryout, and I was pretty impressed with this college season. I think could be ready to kind of make that leap is Grace Maroon. Those are that's
I have Grace Maroon on my
mostly where
list
I'm
as
at with
well.
my locks, with a couple other players who I'm like, I think you could slide over to lock or top of likelies.
Here's some locks for me that you haven't named already. Um, Abby Schiltz, Devin Quinn,
That's yep.
Emily Posey, who I think is going to have a really big college season. Mia Beeman Weber, Margot Nissen, and Emily Kemp.
Oh,
That
I
rounds
forgot.
out
I
my
have Emily
locks
Kemp on my
list.
list, but I forgot her. I forgot.
So that's my list. Otherwise, you've named the names. But the hard
Those
thing
are
is,
all players
how
who
many
were in
spots are
my
there?
locks before I cut
There's like
down.
45
36
player.
per, right?
Is that it? Because they only take 24. Okay, yeah.
You take 24 for the single gender division team, and then you take uh
I named
another
16
24,
locks. Is that too
right? I
many?
think.
It's probably too many.
Right, that's you're going through my experience
Yeah,
right now.
yeah. I definitely have too many on the MMP side. I gotta axe some people, which is hard because I don't know who I'm
It's
gonna
super
axe.
hard.
I might just roll with it, but like lock has to mean something different than likely. Well,
Yeah, I
I
mean,
I
the players you
genuinely
didn't
feel pretty
mention, like
strong. Go ahead.
players you didn't mention who I think, maybe could have I could see making an argument for a lock. I mean, you mentioned Abby Schultz. She was right near the top of my list. Quincy Booth, Chagall Gelfin looked fantastic during the club season. We've seen Lily Terpstra play at a really high level in semi-pro, not necessarily in club, but that could be a good leg up for her. So there are players even beyond just that list that could and fill out my likelies group. But I needed to cut down my locks in some way.
All right. I'm going to bounce over to MMPs. By the way,
Fun.
we're going to talk in more detail about likelies, dark horses, sleeper picks in our subscriber bonus segment out the back immediately following this podcast in our Discord. So join us there for a deeper discussion of U24s and picking these rosters. Okay, MMP side. So let me start with the mega obvious, I think. And then, we can go from there. So, well, coming off of this Club Nationals, Micah Glass is the lockiest of locks. What a monster year he had. Tobias Brooks, Dexter Clyburn, Will Brandt, Peter Borth, maybe Rutledge Smith and Mega Lock. I think so.
I would.
That's probably my list of like ultra mega, definitely going to make the team locks.
I think for me, you're missing maybe two more, which is Declan Miller and Anton Orm.
Okay.
I think those two are pretty proven, both at the club and college level and beyond. I think that I would be surprised if they didn't make it.
They're both on my locks list. I just didn't know if they were ultra mega locks.
we've subdivided the locks into the lockiest locks and the slightly less locky locks.
But I don't disagree. Now I'm wondering, so where do I start to cut down this list? Which right now my list is like 18 players long. It's like, I don't know about that. Who else? Who's on your locks list that hasn't been named then?
Oh man, this is such a hard cut here. Okay, the rest of my locks list, I'll take Will Selfridge. I'll take Kyle Liu, Zeppelin Ronig, Cedar Hines, and I think I'm going to take Justin Burnett in what I'm going to call my last slot.
I thought I had him on my list and you didn't, and I was pretty surprised.
It's hard. It's so hard.
How does Burnett not make a team?
I mean, he's really good. But I feel like I could say that about like 20 players.
I know. Okay, well, I'm with you on Selfridge, Liu, Ronig, and Burnett. And the question is, where do I start to cut down my list? Because for sure I have Paul Krennic on my list. I'm surprised you don't have him on yours, to be honest.
I mean, he's right there in that next group, which some people are being listed.
There. This dude, wasn't he already on
There are people being listed in the chat right now who are also right there. They got to wait till the subscriber bonus to hear me talk more about these people.
Paul Krennic was already on the U24s. Like, he was a monster at last year's college nationals. There's really no way he doesn't make the team. Okay, so after that,
everyone can't beat a lock. That's all I'm saying.
I think I have to cut the rest of my locks list and put them into the likelies. Let's see what the chat is saying. Aaron Bartlett. Okay, I'll tell you why Aaron Bartlett isn't a lock. Because I basically agree, but he missed tryouts because he was hurt. I think he was there, but he wasn't playing really. And he's hurt. So I don't really know what his deal is with the injury status. I think if he is going to be 100% healthy for U24s, he will make the team despite not trying out. That's my take. But I can't put him as a lock because of the injury.
Yep.
Let's see. Miles Grovic. He's right. He is one of the players that's lit on my locks list right now that I feel like my locks list is too long, so I have to move down. But I think I basically agree. Max Charles says lock the Grossbergs. Both of them were on like the top of my likelies list. I'm not sure about the youngest Grossberg, or was it the middle Grossberg? Sam. I'm not sure if he's going to make it. He's almost more in the, he's like lower likelies, maybe on the more on the dark horse side, just because of his age.
Yeah, it's mostly the same sentiments. Raekwon Atkins is somebody else who was like right near the edge of lock for me, who I had to trim when I trimmed down the list. I had to push him to the top of the next category. You mentioned PK, Oscar Graf, also kind of
Yeah.
around that group.
Oh yeah.
I
had
and then
Xavier Fuzat, and then I was
that's
like,
exactly
wait a minute,
what I was about to say
Texas.
next.
He's from Texas. Downgrade.
You got to take the Texas tax. He's got to go down the list because they're not taking nobody from Texas.
Oh no. Scotty Whitley is on my list, but I moved him to likelies.
Yeah,
Like,
so the
subscribers
are going to get to hear some
general
juice.
has been getting disrespected. Scotty Whitley was tremendous last college season. I feel like he is the perfect fit for U24 team.
I got a lot more names to talk about. I got a lot more.
Justin Burnett dropping it in the chat. Sam had a better tryout than Adam. No cap.
I will say, so what I heard about East Coast tryouts is that it was super windy, and that made for a very different feeling tryout. There were a lot of mistakes being made. But you know, how players responded to that, how they dealt with that, and maybe a little more of a space for cutters to show out than handlers. I don't know.
Well,
that's
watching Sam Grossberg absolutely cook in windy HSNI bracket play last year was awesome. I think he had like 7 or 8 assists in a game. He is really good. He is really, really good. Could be a special player. I will not be surprised at all if he makes the team. Grossbusters going to nationals at some point soon, Keith.
Grossbusters. How about the Georgia Tech Busters or whatever? Gross Tech. Come up with something there. A tribe called Gross.
Adam Miller says, which Freed brother makes it? There can only be one.
Eli. Eli's like in the post lock category to me.
Post lock. What does that mean?
Locks I couldn't make space for.
All right. Well, we're gonna dive deeper for subscribers following the show. You can listen to our Out the Back segments every week live and on demand. With any level of an Ultiworld subscription, just go to ultiworld.com/subscribe and sign up. And I don't know if I'm supposed to promo this now, but I'm gonna. We are excited to be rolling out Send It Back once again. You remember this, Keith? Remember Send It Back? Some of our newer audience might not remember it, but during COVID, we started doing a series we call Send It Back, and we go back and watch big classic games with the players who played in them or coached in the coaches who coached in them, and they talk about the game, and we do it live on Ultiworld. And so we're starting tomorrow. You can watch with a standard or all access Ultiworld subscription. It's going to be happening every week. Maybe minus a holiday week or two between now and the end of January. We've got some great games already lined up. Tomorrow, we will kick things off with the Cal Poly Slow versus UNC 2024 College Men's Semifinal. And I am pumped. I am pumped. We're going to be hearing from the players who are in that epic game, certainly the game of most notoriety from that year's tournament. So sign up for a subscription today and join in the fun. We're going to take a quick break right now. On the other side, we're talking club awards. Lots of players of the year and all club teams named. We're going to talk about it next.
Breakmark now has sublimated 5-panel hat. You can get the hat and their famous reversible free with the purchase of one of their 3-piece team bundles, starting at just $85. Get all the details at breakmark.com.
Welcome back to Deep Look. The club awards have been rolling out over the last couple of weeks as the club nationals got all wrapped up in San Diego. It's always a fun time of year to talk about the players who impressed us the most. So everything from player of the year, offensive player of the year, defensive player of the year, breakout, I believe coaching. Are those getting announced today, Keith?
Coach should be out today. Yeah, we can spoil it on the show. I don't mind.
Oh, okay. All right. Maybe we'll drop a little news here then on the pod. Of course, our all first team and second team all club, recognizing the top 14 players of the season. But why don't we start with player of the year? The three players in their respective divisions. In the men's division, Portland Rhino Slams, Rafi Hayes. In the mixed division, Boston Sprockets, Tanner Johnson Go. And in the women's division, Washington, D.C. Scandals, Claire Trope. Keith, I think very deserving players, of course. There's always some questions, about who was absolutely at the tippy top. But given the performances of these three players, I really have no quibbles. I think there's a case to be made for another player in the mixed division. But otherwise, I feel pretty great about these. Like Rafi getting his due as a really a truly elite player feels well deserved. And what a year for Portland Rhino Slam.
Yeah, this felt like a best player on the best team kind of moment, which was totally fair. I mean, they were clearly they were dominant at nationals for the back end of the run. They had a great regular season, as they have been being sure to remind us over and over again in the Discord and other channels. They've been actively telling us, like, we did well in the regular season, and the only time that we didn't do well was pro champs, and we had 13 people. So I mean, they feel like they ran the table, and Rafi has established himself as one of the best players in the game. I think that was kind of known coming in, but he looked the part. He was dominant in the air. He's a great connective piece too, though. I think he showed off that he was more than just kind of the big skying deep threat that some people potentially know him as. That he has a diverse offensive toolkit to bring to bear and can fit as a piece in an offense as well as he can be the focal point. So I think that was a big change for him with Rhino, and he flourished in that role.
Yeah, and I think there were individual games or moments at nationals, for instance, where maybe another player kind of had the spotlight a little bit more than Rafi. But I think when you look at it in aggregate, which is what we try to do and capture both nationals and the regular season, you can see why. Like when I think about the other players who made the all club first team, which I can just run through really quick. Sam Little, Nate Goff, Jeff Babbitt, Jack Hatchett, Don Desmarais, and Chris Kocher, all great players, but I don't really see much of a case for any of them over Rafi.
No, and the voters
I will
didn't
say this.
really either.
I would say that had Joe White been fully healthy and had a great club nationals, I think he would have had a very good chance to win this award. But he was not.
I agree with that. I think there's a world in which Machine doesn't even win the tournament and he wins player of the year. But that's all projection at this point. So
how about Tanner Johnson Go? I know there was some hybrid folks who were like, wait a minute. Why don't we see Skunk at the top of this? Clamp Ho. National champ Ho.
Well, it was incredibly close. I mean, literally as close as it could be without coming to tiebreak. Our subscribers will get to see the full voting breakdown. But I'll let you in on that. That it was extremely, extremely close. They were the only two players to get first place votes, and most of the time they got first or second. There were a couple of spotty cases where they were in slightly different positions than that, but I mean, it was really a a two horse race, and it came down to a photo finish, and Tanner got the nod. I saw the argument that oh well, Jimpo won their head to head, so to speak. And I kind of feel like that story. I was rewatching the game, and I kind of felt like that story is maybe a little overblown. But I do think Jimpo had the better game, and obviously his team had the better game. But it wasn't as simple as just he went out there and dominated against Tanner. But yeah, both really deserving players, and I think Tanner earned it with being the type of player that we've seen him be for so long, just a workhorse cutter.
Yeah, and I mean, let's be honest. Like, where is Sprocket without him? Do they get in the bracket? I don't even know if they make it in the bracket. They're definitely not going all the way to the final. He was awesome, like singular talent. I feel like really played to the level that he's capable of. For I don't want to say for the first time, but like this was the first time we've really seen him realize his potential as a player and look like close to his ceiling since he's been a standout in college. And he took them all the way to the finals. It's awesome. It was a great season. And finally, like easily the most obvious of the year, Claire Trope. What a season for Washington D.C. Scandal. Just unbelievable. Like all around defense, offense, throwing, cutting, clutch plays, you name it. Like Claire Trope did everything basically but win the championship. And again, another team that would not be anywhere near where they are without Claire on the field.
And Claire becomes the first person to ever win back-to-back Player of the Year in club. So I honestly, outside of yeah, the first person to win twice in the same division. I think I think Claire Trope has started to establish herself as like a generational player, the type of player who's going to be like a center point for this era, and future Hall of Famer. Like I wouldn't go so far as to say she's the GOAT right now, but like very few players have that in their potential outcomes, and I think the Claire Trope is one of them right now.
Yeah, I mean, did you consider another player on your ballot at all?
No,
This is
no,
not
she
even
was
really
unanimous.
yeah, understandably so. Where do you want to go next, Keith?
Why don't we stay in the women's division since we're here now. Um, just to run down your award winners: Offensive Player of the Year, Carolyn Finney from Fury; Defensive Player of the Year, Allie Wallace from Washington D.C. Scandal; Breakout Player of the Year, Marie Privier, also from Scandal. So nice time on the podium for Scandal. And the Coaches of the Year, are we gonna drop the reveal? Is that where we're going here?
Let's do it. Why not?
All right. This year's Coach of the Year is the coaching staff from Fury, led by Maddie Sang and Nancy Sun.
Well,
big shocker.
You could kind of run it down every year for them, right? Like they they have built as you could hear in our interview last week with the folks from Fury. They have built a unique structure that has led to the greatest dynasty in Club Ultimate history. And it's very impressive how much they're able to get out of their team, how much everybody gets better as a player on Fury. And there's a reason Maddie Sang continues to coach the World Games, because he is the most esteemed coach in the sport.
Yeah, I think this is his actual first Coach of the Year award. He's been on the podium multiple times prior, I think 3 times prior. This is the first time he's actually won it. Maybe that's wrong. Now we didn't start. We've only been awarding it for, this is the 7th time that we've given it out, 8th time that we've given it out. So, it's one of the newer awards, and we haven't been awarding it that long. But getting his due. It's kind of crazy to think this is his first time winning.
That is kind of crazy. But I just, it's a fun awards year. I mean, how about Ali Wallace? I mean, it almost feels to me like Ali Wallace could win a Breakout Player of the Year award. But like, what an awesome job, just rocking and rolling on the D line. I was really impressed with her play, and I guess I was surprised not to see Kirsten Johnson end up on the podium. How close was that vote?
To tiebreak. She tie broke with her teammate Sheila Harris. A lot of fury. Number 1 was Scandal, but 2, 3, and 4 were all Fury players in the voting. It came down to
feels
tiebreak
about right.
with Sheila Harris.
Feels about right.
But Ali Wallace has really evolved as a player. There was somebody asking in our Discord if she could be a potential like World Games dark horse, and compared her to Nate Goff as this big athletic defender who maybe people underestimate their defensive versatility. And I remember that being part of the Nate Goff story, was like, you may think that this guy is just like, he's big and tall, so he's going to guard deep threats, just like you might say the same thing about Ali Wallace. But when you watch them play against handlers, you see them swallow handlers up, and that defensive versatility can play well at the World Games level. So, could we be seeing somebody who's on an unlikely path to stardom, coming from JMU and working their way through the D line at with DC? Maybe. I can see the parallels.
All right, well, let's move to the mixed division. Keith, why don't you take us through those awards?
All right, our mixed division award winners this year: Offensive Player of the Year, Aaron Bartlett from Hybrid; Defensive Player of the Year, also from Hybrid, Nathan Champeau, now friend of the show, recent guest; Breakout Player of the Year, Zach Singer from Sprocket; and the Coaches of the Year coming from the Sprocket coaching staff as well. So all finalists on the top of the awards this year, Sprocket and Hybrid at the top.
I mean, Sprocket to go all the way to the finals. It's special stuff for sure. Yeah, really cool to see. I think obviously Champeau was going to win that Defensive Player of the Year award if he didn't win outright Player of the Year. And I think the same story there, right? If Champeau wins, then Tanner is Offensive Player of the Year. I don't think there's much of a question there. As I don't know, when at some point we made the rule that if you win Player of the Year, you can't win the other awards, because it just like means the same person wins a bunch of stuff. So I think you could make a case that either of those players is in fact the Offensive or Defensive Player of the Year, but that all around Pody award is the one we start with and kind of think about first. So no quibbles here. I mean, I think Breakout is kind of more interesting. Like the podium for Breakout was who?
Zach Singer from Sparket, RV Briantes from Red Flag, and Chagall Gelfin from Dragon Thrust, who I will note won by tiebreak over her teammate Owen Suflo, also from Dragon Thrust.
Love that. Cool stuff. I always like to see
RV Briantes like needs to be recognized. I mean, I had never heard of this player until Nationals, and they came out and just like scorched earth goal scoring campaign, crazy stuff, huge breakout, and like just got knocked out by a player who was on a magical run to the final.
Briantes had 7 blocks to lead her team, 16 assists, second on the team, 8 goals, fourth on the team.
What crazy numbers!
That's pretty sick. No question. And again, that's like it's cool to see somebody just pop off, kind of feeling like out of nowhere. Briantes was on a juniors team in 2023, so just a really promising up and comer. Definitely a name to keep an eye on. Like when you come out and you beast mode like that, after just graduating high school, that's a sign of somebody we could see around for a long time. It's going to be on Canadian national teams moving forward for a long time. Keep remember the names.
U24s, baby.
Yeah, easy. Okay, men's division. Take us through it.
All right, over in the men's division, your offensive player of the year, and we may want to talk about this podium because I think there was a little bit of controversy around it. Uh, Johnny Malks from Truck Stop takes the top spot, although Sam Little and Chris Kotcher took 2 and 3, both from Pony, and that caused some conversation. D Pody, also 2 players from the same team. Daniel Lee taking the top spot, but Dave Sealand, his teammate, taking the second spot. And more Rhino at the breakout level. Micah Glass, the clear breakout player of the year, and the coaches of the year. Actually, I think I saw one of the coaches of the year in this chat recently. Revolver led by Malika Anderson.
Very nice. Rocking the selfie in the photo. Awesome. Has Malika won before? I feel like she was on a podium.
No.
Keep the master spreadsheet.
Yeah, I have. She was on the podium in 2021 with Cody Mills.
Okay. That must be what I'm remembering. Yeah. So, well, why don't we talk about the offensive player of the year podium? Is this about the grousing around too many Pony players getting recognition?
I just want to shout out Malika's reaction to the YouTube is all caps. Wait, what?
Congratulations, Malika. We're glad you're here listening right now to find out in real time along with everyone. Well deserved.
Yeah, but so back to offensive player of the year. I mean, basically, I think Dylan has even said himself. Basically, you could take him with a couple grades of salt. But the Pony offense was made to look pedestrian by Rhino in the final, and for them to have 2 players at the top of the list when nobody from Rhino made the offensive player of the year podium. And yes, you could probably say, well, Rafi won Pody, that took him out of the conversation. So I think that's part of the background mechanics here. But there are people who are like, how did Pony get 2 players on the offensive player of the year podium, but there's nobody from Rhino? So there's definitely some consternation about that.
Hang on a second. The Rhino guys doth protest a little too much. All right. You guys won the national championship. You have the player of the year on your team. You have the top 2 players in the defensive player of the year award list. You're all over the all club team. How many Rhino guys made all club? 5?
4, I think.
Okay.
4.
It's going to be okay. You guys won. Everyone respects your win. No one thinks that it was a cheapie. This wasn't the bubble. This wasn't, the truck stop asterisk. Legit win. You were the best team. It was awesome. That said, like, what are you looking for, right? The guys on Pony who got listed, first of all, Pony's offense played awesome until that game. Awesome is a little bit of a stretch. I feel like their defense was the bigger reason for their success, but Sam Little and Chris Kotcher were really, really good the entire season. They were very good. Kotcher got a little hurt and was a little less effective, but Sam Little played great the whole time. The Rhino guys, first of all, Micah gets breakout player of the year, which I think is maybe a higher prestige in being on the offensive player of the year podium. Rafi's already player of the year. Where else are we going on the offensive line to pick somebody to put on this list? That's my only question.
Yeah, we've summoned Dylan to the chat for the record. Who is right? Okay. I was going to correct myself. It is only 3 players from Rhino made the all club. Jack Hatchett, Rafi Hayes, and who am I missing? Henry Yang was on the second team. But you mentioned that players on the podium can't win other awards. We actually instituted another rule that we now call the Cammy Groom rule, which is that players can't win multiple of offensive, defensive, and breakout. So you get placed on the one which you had the highest votes. So Micah was going to take breakout. That said, I don't think that actually erases the point, because I do think Micah Glass, who was the player that maybe people were saying should have been representing Rhino as offensive player of the year, didn't get a lot of offensive player of the year votes anyway. That may have factored into how the voters were thinking, but I do think, he wasn't at the top of my ballot. And I think the grief that we've been given is partially just in good fun, but also I think it's worth thinking about. I think Micah Glass was really good offensively. So Adam Miller says in the chat that Pony got carried by their D-line. And you mentioned that their offense wasn't always great, but Sam and Kocher were always great. I think that
That's what I'm
the
saying.
hiccups in their
That's what I'm
O-line
saying.
were smoothed out by Sam and Chris Kocher a lot.
Yes. Listen, I can see one or two more people on the all club team from Rhino. But you always have to do the exercise. Who are you trimming? Are you cutting Quinn Finer? Are you cutting Trent Dillon? Who are you cutting? Because I could see finding a spot for Micah Glass on the all club team. Absolutely. I bet they're going to have 2 or 3 guys on the unofficial third team. And Dylan Freechild himself could be an all clubber this year, I think. So it was a kind of a weird season, because there were we had US Open, and then everything else kind of felt like it was either preseason or interrupted a lot by Worlds. So a little unusual in that way, but at the end of the day, Rhino, I think, got amazing performances out of basically their entire roster at Nationals, and that's why they marched and had a pretty easy win in the bracket.
Yeah, I also think Rhino got their votes split a little bit because they had so many players who stood out. So they had 3 different guys who got votes for offensive player of the year: Jack Hatchett, Matt Rader, and Micah Glass. So that's when and that's excluding that they had the player who was the pody. So all those guys are on the line together. There's only so much of the offensive pie to slice up to give them credit for. You know what I mean? So I think that ends up kind of hurting in a way your ability to win awards, but tell you what, it helps is your ability to win titles. So having a bunch of great players on your O-line could do that.
Vin Bowie wants to see Jeff Babbitt snipped from all club. What do you think, Keith?
Interesting. I think Jeff Babbitt was 1A, 1B regular season to me with Joe White.
He had a monster
regular season. Brief times, and I maybe more than anybody, I was counting Nationals this year, and I thought it was unfortunate that he played so much defense and not so much offense at Nationals, but still to me was so undeniable that he was pretty high on my list.
Let me talk to you about undeniable. What is undeniable is that Joe White was one of the best 14 players this season.
Yeah, take us to this
criminal offense that he did not make the second team. Listen, I understand that he got hurt. I get it. But to leave the guy off of awards, I feel like the awards from a season should be a little snapshot of history that we can look back at and we can say, who was really good that year? Oh, yeah. Cassidy Rasmussen, when he won Player of the Year, you're like, yeah, he was awesome that season. And now we're going to be robbed of knowing that Joe White was so damn good this year. He was in another stratosphere for much of this season, and then he gets hurt, and everybody just says, well, then goodbye. The voters are wrong. It's a shameful stain on our website.
Okay. Joe White, who very unfortunately, missed basically all of Nationals, played pretty well in his very brief appearance. But so Joe White played regionals. He played pro championships, which was kind of a shell tournament as it was. And he played the US Open. That's his.
And he played in regionals.
He played in one tournament where other teams had good players.
Okay, but
I was telling you, they showed up with
knock him for playing all of the regular season. He played the regular season.
He didn't play all the regular season. He missed PEC. He didn't play the whole regular season. He missed one of the 3 tournaments.
Half the damn country
played regionals.
PEC.
Oh yeah, I'm sure he was crushing Diesel at regionals.
Well,
Great
What do you
job.
want him to
And then
do?
he missed nationals, which is like at especially it's not his fault. I'm not saying that he did something wrong. You
Listen,
just can't give somebody credit for what they didn't do for what you think they would have done.
I am saying you have to make an exception because of how good his regular season was. If we're talking about some random person, middle of the pack, okay, I get it. I'm with you. But this is not that. This is the best player on earth right now. And he had an amazing season until he got hurt. And then he's just forgotten.
But
I
I'm
don't agree with
saying
it.
one,
I don't agree with it.
he didn't have an amazing season because he didn't play that many games. But he also he got the number one spot in the top 25 players because that exercise is about looking at a player's like overall what we perceive to be their talent and potential. And awards are about looking at a player's total contributions to the season and then weighting it with the most important games counting for more, which in this case was nationals. And in this year,
Yeah.
nationals counted for even more because you are removing some level of whatever you're taking away from the pro championships already. So it was a weird year. I think that led to some weird outcomes. It sucks that Joe got hurt. I think we all agree about that. And that Joe's super talented. That's why he was the number one in top 25. Player's really good, but when I do my accounting for awards voting, I sit down and I try and look at what was this person's overall production. And that does not just mean goals and assists. That is not a good enough data set to give you. And then I weight it. So like in my head, I'm kind of just doing the math. And when you get no points for the most important part of the of the season, basically, it's just going to harm your overall score. There are enough other
I
players who played really well that it was not hard for me to come up with 14 other players that I felt like contributed more with that weighting system.
Kenny
There are
Taylor in
people
the
in the
chat.
chat saying this proves that it's solely Nationals performance.
Yeah.
That is not accurate. But we have always been transparent about the fact that Nationals counts for a lot more than the rest of the season. And that's because teams do not approach the regular season with their full-throated effort all the time. Right? Yeah, Joe's probably not playing the same rotation that he's going to play. He's probably not playing against the same defenders. We know at Nationals, everybody's going to put their best foot forward pretty much for the whole time. And we basically don't count consolation play, although some of that probably sneaks in. Hard to wash that off. But there's a reason that we don't count the regular season as much. And I think it's totally justified. And we've always been transparent about that fact. But I disagree with the idea that we don't count the regular season at all. Although in this case, in this specific season, the regular season counted for, to me, less than even usual.
I hear everything you're saying. I agree. It is important that we do include the regular season, which we do. The reason that I am making an adamant case is because I want to acknowledge the regular season. And we've got Dylan in the chat saying Joe should have been on first team. We got Jack Hatchett, first teamer, in the chat, who says he should have been on first team. So Jack agrees that we should take him off and put Joe on first team in his place. That's very, very big of Jack.
With this, that we need to address. Can we come up? Is there a donation system? Can you donate? That would be good.
My point is, Joe is so good. You have to just be like, too bad. Like, I know it sucks that he missed nationals. You give him a spot on second team, and we sing his praises, and we say he would have been first team if he hadn't gotten hurt.
Dylan says he donates Jeff Babbitt's spot. The Jeff Babbitt haters are
now. See,
that's
strong. Babbitt is a great example
we can't
of why
just
the
count
regular
nationals,
season does
everybody, and now they're
that's right. All right. We're going to the mailbag question of the week. What do we got this week, Keith?
This week's mailbag question of the week is, why is Keith right about this, about awards? No, that's it's actually sort of like that, but less Keith centric. So basically the question comes in from Discord, and it's, should we restructure our club awards? And this actually, I guess it didn't really come in from Discord. It came in really from Twitter. I think it was Dylan himself who raised this question. Should we be doing, instead of all club with top 14, should we be doing top 7 offense and top 7 defense? Because defensive players do not get the love they deserve based on the premise of this question. The D-Podies, it is uncommon for the depoties to make all club. It shows our offense bias, perhaps. What do you think, Charlie? Should we restructure awards to all offense and all defense rather than all club first team and all club second team?
Are we talking about O line and D line, or are we talking about offensive production and defensive production?
Those are different things to me. I think if I had to pick between just those two options, I would do all offensive line and defensive line. But then, like, how do you manage crossover players? What if a player switches lines during the middle of the year, a la Jeff Babbitt?
What if players don't have a line like Fury?
Right. If you're Fury, what do we just do?
There's a separate Fury awards. We give the top 7 Fury players.
All Fury.
So my answer is no, with a caveat. My answer is that I like having individual players recognized for being the number one player in a category. Offense, defense, breakout, etc. I think we could still think about other ways of adjusting at the margins. Maybe we want to do something that's more akin to rookie of the year for a club. It's kind of a strange way sometimes of thinking about it. Breakout maybe captures that already. I do think so. First of all, we do an all defensive line in our subscriber bonus categories. I'm fairly sure. Is that accurate? Top 7
I don't
defenders.
know if it's like it like every year, but I think an all defense team
we
is
often do
not
that.
An uncommon superlative.
It is very reasonable to criticize the fact that a lot of times the teams skew towards offensive production. However, there's a reason for that, and it's because those players are more valuable to their team than defensive specialists. That's fact. It's fact. Now, if you're on a really, 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 really elite club team, you probably say to yourself, well, actually, our defensive specialists are really important to what we do. Well, that's because you have the offensive pieces that you need to score your breaks. So offense is the number one part of Ultimate. It's much more important to be a great offensive player than it is to be a great defender. And that is reflected by these teams. And, a lot of the time, a really tremendously talented, athletic defensive player who gets a lot of blocks is also good at offense and then is recognized on these teams. So I would be open to doing more defensive awards, but I don't really think we need to do more offensive awards. There's plenty of that already.
Yeah, I don't think I would get rid of. I like the overall evaluative all club. Like, there is a chance for a defensive player to break in there, and I think when they do, it's because they were truly a two-way dominated player. Like, I think that I could see doing an all defense team in basically the same way that we do Depody. But I said in the Discord, but I think that, one, this is not an ultimate thing. This is basically all sports.
Yes.
Getting off productively offensive talent is harder than getting great defensive talent. Playing great offense is really hard. And that is why basically universally across sports, the highest paid, most sought after stars are players who generate offense. And that goes across so many sports. And there's a reason for that. But I also think that we have a challenge in evaluating strong defense. I think it's very difficult for us to do it in a way that can be so comprehensive that we can really drill down. The further you get away from the top defenders, the harder it is for us, I feel like, to evaluate what those players are contributing to the field, because so much of defense requires watching that individual and knowing how they're operating within their scheme. And that stuff is just really difficult to see on tape and with limited opportunities to see it. Like, blocks are just not a great measure of defense. I think we all have come to know that. But they're also just infrequent. They happen so infrequently comparatively to goals and assists. There's just not enough.
They are a great measure. They are a great measure of defense, but they are not enough. They are,
I don't even know that they're especially. I mean, at the elite club level, I think blocks can be a little more telling than at other levels. But like, I as a college coach who takes a lot of stats, I've seen a lot of times the people who get the most blocks are the people who play deep in the zone. They do not have to be the best defender on the team. It's got to be standing there when the disc gets thrown near it. Like
That's fair.
Maybe at
That's
the
not
elite
as
club
true at
level, it
club.
can be pretty
That's
telling.
not as true at club. I mean, there's so many
But a lot of
turnovers
great
in
defenders,
college
just
that
people
like
don't get thrown.
blocks are a
Their
dime a
players don't
dozen.
get thrown to them. You know.
I know, but that is actually. I mean, you can be a great defender and just clamp somebody up so they never touch the disc. But you're a better defender if you can both clamp them up and get blocks by poaching or baiting or just being so good that you get crazy Ds. Like it is simply that much more valuable to get a takeaway relative to just stopping somebody's offensive flow. It just is. It just is. So I think block getters are extremely valuable, but you can be a great defender even if you don't get a lot of blocks, because you lead to, if you're a handler cover, you might not get that many blocks, but your ability to mark, to put pressure on resets that causes bad throws or like bailout stuff, like that stuff also counts. Like in a way, you're getting a block, even if it doesn't show up on the stat sheet that way. So it's true. Like the only way to evaluate that is like talk to players and watch tape. So it is hard. It's harder to evaluate defense than it is offense, because offense we can measure yardage, goals, assists, and like hockey assists. And like that's going to give you a pretty good story of how good you are on offense. Like, sure, are there players who are really great at creating space and providing stall 8 open available cuts? Yes, those players exist, but generally that's going to be captured in some way by their yardage, even if they don't get involved as a finisher. So I think it's hard, but I think it's not like it's impossible. I think that the challenges come in places like Adam points out in the chat. What do you do with somebody who's a great defender on an O-line? Nate Goff had 8 blocks at Nationals playing on the O-line. That is an incredible number of blocks. And being a great defender on an O-line or a great offensive player on a D-line does muddy the waters a little bit, but that's kind of what's cool about Ultimate, right?
Yeah, you generally have to be able to play both ways. I think Nate Goff he crossed over a lot, and so I think he probably got a fair number of those blocks on defense. But that goes back to my point about yes, block getting is valuable, but even block getters don't get a lot of blocks. Like when you look at the leaders in blocks, they're going to have like 10, 11 blocks at a tournament. And that means that every time someone gets a fluky block that they didn't really play great defense for, it muddies the waters. Like there just are fewer blocks. So each one feels a little more random. Yep. And it can mess up your numbers a lot. It makes it a harder stat to utilize. I want to address Vin brought up the point. He said you're conflating D-line players with defensive specialists, and that our lists bend towards O-line players, not just offensive players. And there's 2 things I have to say about that. One is maybe that's true, but I think that being on defense, being on a D-line in elite club is going to limit your ability to get touches. It's going to limit your ability to play offense. You're just going to play offense 100%. Less frequently. So it's going to be harder for you to stand out offensively because you're just going to have the disc less frequently. The other thing is, then we did that with Babbitt, and everybody's like, cut Babbitt off the first team. We picked one D-line guy to make all club, and everybody's like, cut him.
Boo. Yeah, it's a hard job. And trust me when I say this, because when we have players come in and submit their award ballots and their top 25s, it is nonsense. They're much worse than our staff ballots by a long way. A long way. It's hard. It's hard to evaluate players objectively that you don't personally know well. And as a result, we get some really crazy stuff and some really crazy takes. But we love the conversation. We love the banter. We love when people disagree.
Oh, it's been awesome.
And obviously, Keith and I disagree sometimes. So, all right, we're coming up on 90 minutes, so it's time to call it a day. We've got some fun shows for you coming up. We are hoping to very soon be joined by Kevin Erlenbach, the new CEO of USA Ultimate. We will let you know when that's going to be happening. It will happen at some point, hopefully before Christmas. He is now actively working at USAU, so looking forward to having him on. And we've got our year in review coming up around the corner. Maybe a little Mount Rushmore. Who's on the Mount Rushmore for you for Ultimate? We'll be talking about that in our sub bonus next week. Coming up after this, subscriber bonus segment. We are going deeper on U24s, likelies, dark horses, random player who we think is going to make it for no reason other than gut. We'll see you there.